The Portal Kings are back at it again this offseason. Lane Kiffin and Deion Sanders are making moves and doing it in big numbers. I got On3 national columnist Jesse Simonton joining me to break it all down. But first, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. Look at this, over 30K. I appreciate it. We talk portal, we talk recruiting. It's 365 days out of the year, all recruiting. Hit subscribe. All right, let's bring on Jesse Simonton, and let's start with Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. Last year, we debated, was he the Portal King? Was it Coach Prime? Was it Mike Norvell? But this year, it's clear who the undisputed king of the portal is, and it's Lane Kiffin. Jesse, why is Lane having more success than anyone else, at least early on in the portal season?
Well, I think there's a couple factors here in play, Josh, and we would be naive to look past NIL playing a big, role in a lot of this. Lane has been very transparent and open about the way NIL and free agency works. He has kind of complained and opined that it is kind of pay for play, but that doesn't mean he's not going to be able to put these rules to his benefit. The Grove Collective has certainly stepped forward this season, and the second fold is that not only is Ole Miss being aggressive from an NIL perspective, they also have a proof of concept with transfers. Lane has shown that he can take a guy from another program, whether they were productive or not, and really turn them into a player at Ole Miss. And so whether that's a starting quarterback in Jackson Dart or a guy like Trey Harris, who was a stud at La Tech and comes in last season and is one of the more productive players in the SEC from the receiver position when he's healthy and on the field. So, they've assessed their needs, and you've seen what they've landed out of this portal is defensive heavy. We'll see how that kind of transpires on that side of the ball. Lane hasn't had as much success with those guys, but it's clear that Ole Miss is gunning for it in 2024 right now.
Absolutely. And you're right. The Grove Collective, I think this year on their helmet, it says Ole Miss. And then in small letters, it says powered by the Grove Collective, especially for 2024. But so far, Jesse, who is your favorite addition to this Ole Miss roster?
I mean, Joey Freshwater has gone fishing, and he's, landing some of the big whales that have been in the portal thus far. You have to like just what they've done on the defensive line. Getting Florida's best pass rusher in Princely Almalieva. I mean, he was an all SEC guy a year ago. And then you have Tyler Barron, not quite as accomplished maybe, but is 250 pounds. Where did Ole Miss kind of struggle a year ago? It was stopping the run. He's a defensive end that not only had 6 sacks, but can play the edge. He's played over 1,000 snaps at Tennessee. So a lot of SEC experience. Then you have a guy like Walter Nolan, who is rumored to be, possibly committing to Ole Miss. And so that's one that they're still waiting on. That's a TBD. But I like what they've done at the defensive line. And then I like what they've done on the secondary. They just got Decarian Richardson from Mississippi State, who was one of the top-rated cornerbacks in the entire transfer portal class. So he comes over from the rival Bulldogs. He's been a 2-year starter, highly productive player. And then they get a guy in Nicholson from Illinois, maybe not as well-known nationally, but, on that Illini secondary 2 years ago that was so feisty, that basically got Ryan Walters the Purdue job. You see Brown in the NFL. You see Witherspoon, what he's doing. He was playing opposite Witherspoon, and he was a very good player as well for the Fighting Illini. And so, when you take those two pieces, the secondary and defensive line, you're starting to really shore up a unit that a year ago made some strides under Pete Golding, but still has a lot of room to grow. If that can become a top even 40-ish, 30-ish unit, Josh, we're talking about an Ole Miss team that won 10 games this year that's going to have an easier schedule in 2024. They could legitimately contend for the SEC. Now, if they can contend for the SEC, that means you're probably going to contend for a college football playoff. And so that would be unrivaled history for the Rebels program. This is a team that hasn't even won 10 games all that many times in school history.
Yeah, the expectations. I mean, hey, you have a good portal class. Those expectations, they can go through the roof. Now, let's talk about Coach Prime and what's going on out there in Colorado. They are absolutely getting busy. I try to count, but they're closing in on about 24 transfers right now. What do you like about their haul thus far?
I like that they just are getting bigger bodies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even necessarily about a particular name, because when you talk about some of the offensive linemen, you and I have spoken on it previously. Some of these guys, you're getting two guys from Indiana. Well, how good are those guys? I mean, Indiana had a terrible offense in the Big Ten. Their coach gets fired, but at least they're just 300-plus pound bodies, and they do have some starting experience in the Power Five. I really like Mayers. We touched on him previously. He is a guy that is not only a 300-pound body, but was an all-conference player at the CUSA level. And so he's going to be one of the better interior guards. And then I think it's intriguing some of the defensive linemen they've got. You get one of the Cade twins from Kentucky. He's a former blue chip guy that Tennessee and other SEC programs were heavily in on during the recruiting process. He does have some experience, played a decent amount in the rotation for the Wildcats this past year. You get a guy from LSU, edge rusher. What can he kind of bring? I think is TBD. Benson, same thing from Alabama, or Barnes, same thing from Alabama. Hasn't played a whole lot, but they're just big bodies, Josh. And we know that's kind of what the Buffs need. They need a herd of 300-pounders. And Prime has kind of identified that and at least addressed the team's size issues. We'll see how it turns out in terms of production, but you at least have to like that they've just gotten bigger.
Yeah, and I like throwing numbers at the problem, because having seen the way that the transfer portal works, for every big name that you hear about, like take Florida State, for instance, they had a great run this year. And for every Keon Coleman and Jared Verse you hear about, there's a lot of duds that they take as well. So you kind of got to throw numbers at the problem. And I think that's a little bit of what Colorado's doing right now, and taking bigger bodies. I got maybe an off the wall question here, but with the quarterback market out there, does Colorado make a run at a guy like a Malachi Nelson, who has multiple years of eligibility still remaining? We know Shedeur Sanders is there this year, but could they make a run at a transfer portal quarterback this cycle?
They should. I agree wholeheartedly with your thinking here, Josh. I mean, you're not going to get somebody that's obviously going to compete with Shedeur, because Deion's entire priority is to, set up Shedeur Sanders for success and to get him as highly drafted as possible. If they do go after a Malachi Nelson or someone of that ilk, the musical chairs are getting filled quickly here in the quarterback market. But if there is another guy that jumps in that has multiple years of Power 5 eligibility remaining, or just 3 years of eligibility remaining, it would behoove Colorado to jump in. And it would also signal that Deion is serious about being in Boulder for the long term. Now, if they don't, I think you can continue to question, how long does he plan to kind of be the head coach at Colorado? He did obviously get Jordan Seaton, the 5-star offensive lineman, but if he gets another job, Seaton can follow him to another school. Obviously, part of the reason why Deion was not on any sort of, coaching market this year is that he wasn't going to leave behind Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter. Mm-hmm. That becomes a different equation a year from now. But if you can get a Malachi Nelson, you would solve a lot of problems for your future program. You would already have a blue chip quarterback waiting in the wings. And so I think that would be a very interesting move. I mean, we know that Deion's always going to be able to get the playmakers. He got Will Shepard. Another great example, another guy I really like that they got out of the portal this year. Very underrated player at Vanderbilt. He's going to step in and be very good next year, next to Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn and those guys. I mean, the receiver position is always going to take care of itself. He's going to be able to land cornerbacks. Who does he have lined up to follow behind his son Shedeur? Because Shedeur that was the Louis that he brought. It turns out a lot of the Louis that he had a year ago was, Samsonite or whatever. It wasn't the greatest luggage. Shedeur and Travis are Louis. They're all conference level players. Malachi Nelson at least has that type of potential. Yeah. Or if let's say if a guy like Austin Norvat, who thought he was going to be, ready to go at Oregon in the future, and suddenly they may be bringing in Dante Moore. Yeah. What if he becomes available? Another blue chip guy. So I like the way you're thinking. I mean, I think it would show a lot of signs about how serious Deion is about this long-term vision of turning around Colorado.
Yeah, and I think maybe this is the year you can do it. I mean, I know there's a lot of demand for quarterbacks, but there seems to be a lot of supply as well out there on the market. So we'll have to see. Now, do you expect more? Because we've seen Lane Kiffin and Coach Prime come out guns blazing and just gobbling up everything they can get. How much more action are you expecting from Lane Kiffin and Coach Prime?
Well, from Ole Miss's perspective, one of the names we didn't touch on was Juice
Walter
Wells.
Nolan.
And that was who was a stud receiver. Didn't play a whole lot a year ago, but was an all-conference player for South Carolina in 2022. He's a guy that has first-round potential if he can stay healthy. Now, that's been a battle for him for several years now. But if so, I mean, you love pairing him with Trey Harris in that Ole Miss offense that is set to return Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins, so I think Ole Miss is probably getting closer to being done. We mentioned Walter Nolan's name. That's kind of the white whale that they're waiting on there. Mm-hmm. There may be another couple name or two. With Colorado, I think they're going to continue to just kind of hoard as many Power 5 players as they can. Right now, the recruiting class only has 11 commits, I believe. So they probably have some additional spots remaining.
Yeah, that's true.
There could be some more turnover there. And so I think if I'm Colorado and some more guys are kind of calling, but again, they just got the package deal with the Wade twins. If guys like that from the SEC or elsewhere become available, I would be hard-pressed to see Colorado turning those kind of prospects down.
Yeah, it makes sense. With the limited number that they're taking from the high school level, they're going to supplement that with the transfer portal. So probably more to come for Coach Prime, whereas Lane Kiffin, I think he has a couple more targets to go, but I think the majority of that transfer class is already in the boat. So Jesse Simonton, thank you for checking in on these two Portal Kings. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Josh.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that content, be sure to subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We have a new page dedicated only to recruiting. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now.